having a lively discussion here, and we've set aside some time for you, our audience, to be able to interact. So we're going to field some questions. You can ask them to either side, you can ask them to all four debaters, you can ask them to each individual person if you would like. If you'll raise your hand, I'll recognize you. Mr. Martinez over there, give it up for PJ. And just to help out with this process, I'm going to be using my patented truth-seeing goggles. Yes, sir.
First of all, if I remember correctly, at least someone mentioned that said that the British electoral system was completely wrong or something like that. Actually, I would like to have only 6 weeks of having to listen to debates and attack ads and such instead of like 2 to 4 years.
Is that your question? Yeah?
Okay.
Should we have a British system? Is that weird?
And yeah, why don't we just have that and ban lobbying entirely?
I think the big problem there is, like we said before, we're all about balance, right? We do not think it would be a good idea to take the element of free speech completely out of our electoral systems. One of the best things about the American electoral system is that we try to provide a balance between liberty and equality and free speech. I would love to not hear attack ads for months and months and months and months, but please, if you have a way to get politicians to stop talking for more than 6 weeks out of the year, good luck with that, but Americans love to talk, and that's not the part that we're interested in stifling.
Thank you. You have other questions? Right over here.
All right, this is a question directed at the UNT debate team. I thought one of the strongest arguments that the British brought up was the incumbent having an advantage, and how does the McCain-Feingold Act give the person running against the incumbent an equal shot?
I think, one of the ways, and this I guess gets back to the, questions of transparency, is that we think that there should be strong regulations, and that's part of our proposal in terms of disclosure of what is campaign spending versus what is spending from the actual presidency. And those are distinct categories. It's not like you can just use, the president's war money chest or whatever he has and use however much money that you want on your election campaign. If we're able to provide for more transparency, we think that would ensure that funds, only campaign funds, would be used for things like travel expenses, etc. And I also think Romney already has it plain, so that's probably takes it. I mean, their argument is that Air Force One will be used, etc. Most of the Republican candidates already have massive amounts of wealth that they could use to that degree, I guess. No.
I think I would add to that, that yes, it is the case that incumbents may be unduly helped, but they're not unduly helped by the McCain-Feingold Act. They're unduly helped no matter what. So any proposal that they have, which they have admitted that they don't have a proposal, still helps the incumbent. So there's really no solution to that problem. It's fascinating that we continue to talk about that when there's no solution to that debate.
Also, given that the incumbent is Obama and the opposition could be Rick Perry, I'm kind of okay with conceding part of that. So.
Another question? Yes. Right in the middle, please. Great, go for it.
I was just wondering, one of the arguments was that you said that you think Americans are smart enough to see past the media bias, which I think is a whole other debate. But why aren't Americans then smart enough to see past the funding of corporations and what candidates' view on something might be based on that funding? Why wouldn't we be able to see that?
Sure. Fascinating question. Fascinating question. I think that's a very good argument. I think that there are two answers that I would give you. The first is that there's only a risk that it would be worse in the world of not capped spending, right? So it's only a risk that Americans would be more inundated with political ads in a world of unlimited political spending. Right? Does that make sense? So it's only a risk that we will hear more of those messages that will end up being worse. The second response that I would have to that would be that in a world where we have capped spending, or rather, that Americans now do a decent job, admittedly we all wish they could do better, of tersing out the sort of ideology from political ads. And so I think that we're talking about a world of degrees, whereas the negative team has not talked about a world of no possible solution to this problem. They just admit that it's inevitable. That seems undesirable to me at the end of the day.
I also don't think that our sort of only argument about this corporate media influence was about the intelligence of Americans. That was sort of, more of our taking a dig at them argument. But we also think that, if we can sort of use our policy to change the way that corporations have influence in American politics and in the American public in general, the media bias that does exist that Americans cannot overcome in the status quo might have a better chance of sort of being eliminated, etc. So we actually think that our policy could help negate the influence of media that happens now.
A couple more questions. You in the middle.
This was British. In the current system,
Go ahead.
in the current system, like with the unlimited spending, you can have corporations like American Pasta, the Koch brothers, or labor unions on the left donate money. And you said you're worried about attack ads, but how many ads from corporations in the current system are positive? Like, I don't think I've ever seen one.
Okay, I think what we say to that is that corporations can still mount independent issue ads, right, under this system that still have that particular power, but there isn't that direct reference to know that corporation is funding it. I guess the other thing I'd say is that under this particular system, attack ads are just so much more powerful. You need free advertising if you've got a limited campaign chest. And if you need free advertising, the best way to get it is to say something outrageous about your opponent. So I think that's why there'll be more attack ads and a greater proportion of attack ads in this system.
In the middle, in the blue sweatshirt.
Okay, so the British team mentioned, this is for you too, by the way, they mentioned how with limited funding, potential candidates would be unable to travel to the rest of the world, so they would base their ideologies on the ideologies of swing states. What was your answer to that?
I think a few things. First is nothing in the McCain-Feingold Act, which is our proposal, would cap political spending to the degree where candidates would not have the ability to travel to states. Our argument isn't that they should have like $5 or something, but rather that they should not have billions and billions of dollars from corporations. It doesn't require billions and billions of corporate dollars to travel from state to state. The other thing that I think is sort of an important point, even though it's not necessarily maybe what you're looking for, is that swing state influence is inevitable to a certain degree. There are shifts in the electorate, etc., that could sort of enable Obama to maybe visit different states if he thinks that he has a chance in or whatever. But whether or not people pander to swing states is not a function of electoral spending, etc. It's a function of the electoral system, which I don't think is really the scope of this particular debate.
We have set aside time for one summation speech from each side. I'm going to start with the opposition side. That's our blue shaders.